The first thing I heard was that dog. Sharp bark, fast pattern. Not panicked, but close. I was under the overpass down by the river, where the sound of tires overhead makes the silence easier to live with. That night, the silence felt heavy. My name's Clay. I'm 38, a courthouse security officer in Cedar Falls, Iowa. Got a bum leg from my last deployment, a daughter who just turned 8, and a hole in my chest where my wife used to live. Millie was sleeping at my sister Noelle's that Friday, which meant no bedtime stories, no dinner dishes, no reason to rush home to the hum of the fridge, and nothing else. I stood on the riverbank pitching stones into the current, just trying to make some noise. Quick note: before listening, share in the comments how your day is going and which city or country you're watching from. Thanks, and let's continue. That dog barked again, across the water this time, closer to the far side of the bend. I spotted him under a busted willow, circling something that wasn't driftwood. I didn't think. I moved, slid down the embankment, felt the rip-rap shift under my bad knee, hit the cold hard, stepped into the river where the water was shallow and the current slow, soaked to my thighs before I got halfway. The shape on the ground was a woman, young, maybe mid-20s. She was sprawled out half in the mud, lips pale, face drawn, breathing shallow. The dog, a lean shepherd mix with a smart look, stood his ground. One low growl. Then he stepped aside like he understood I wasn't there to make things worse. I dropped to one knee, checked her pulse, thready but there. Her fingers were like ice. Didn't smell like anything sharp or chemical. No blood. She muttered something, sounded like a street name, and then went quiet again. Her bag had spilled open. Inside was a crumpled power shutoff notice. Past due, her name on it, same address she'd mumbled. It wasn't much, but it was something. I looked around for help, but it was late. Cold. The kind of night folks stay inside. Then I saw headlights hit the shoulder up on the road. A beat-up old Chevy idled there. Gus Rennick, local mechanic, maybe 57, leaned out and hollered, "You need a lift, Clay. Looks like she's not walking anywhere soon." "Wouldn't say no," I called back. He climbed down, helped me get her up the rocks. She barely stirred. The dog followed tight behind, like he was glued to her. We loaded into the truck, Gus driving, the woman between us, the dog curled at her feet. First stop was her listed address. The porch light was dead, mailbox stuffed, lock scratched to pieces, like someone had fought with it and lost. No sound inside, no lights, no movement, nothing but cold air and bad news. I looked at Gus. He didn't ask questions, just nodded like, "Next stop's yours." Back at my place, I got the heat cranked up, carried her to the couch, wrapped her in the old quilt Abby used when chemo got rough. The dog, quiet, alert, sat beside her like a watchful sentry. When she started to come around, I gave her warm water with honey. Slow. She didn't talk much. Just sipped, blinked, nodded. I called Tessa, nurse at the courthouse clinic. Told her what I had, asked what I should watch for. She gave me the basics: fluids, warmth, calories, no fast sugars. Watch her breathing. Call it in if she went unresponsive again. I followed every word. Left a note on the coffee table with my name and number, just in case. Then I sat down in the armchair across from her and told myself I'd only close my eyes for a minute. I didn't sleep. Not really. Not with that dog watching me and the thought in my head that my daughter would be home in less than 24 hours. And I'd just let a stranger into her life. But the truth was, she wasn't a stranger anymore. Not after that river. She came to with a flinch like she was waking up inside a fight. Rook was already nosing her hand, and the smell of my dollar store coffee was thick in the room. She blinked a few times, locked eyes with me across the living room and said, "Vicky." Voice rough, but not weak. She sat up slow, clutching the quilt like armor, eyes darting to the door, the windows, the floor plan, like she was checking escape routes on instinct. I stayed seated at the table. Made sure my tone didn't sound like a cop or a babysitter. Name's Clay. You're at my place. Don't worry, nobody's looking for you here. She gave a stiff nod and looked down at the dog. He's not mine, she said, voice quieter now. He just wouldn't leave. He's welcome if he behaves, I said. Same for you. Her eyes jumped back to mine. I kept it formal, laid it all out clean. I've got rules. Doors stay locked, no guests, no surprises. I have a daughter. She comes first, always. So anything between us, if there's even a hint of that, stays safe, above board, and 100% respectful. Vicky nodded like she was swallowing glass. I didn't mean to cause trouble. I should go. She pulled the quilt aside and tried to stand. Her legs buckled. She dropped to her knees and caught herself on the coffee table. The dog, Rook I'd decided, stood beside her and leaned just enough to brace her. I walked over and helped her up. You're not walking anywhere today. That's not a request. She didn't argue after that. I stocked the fridge later that morning. Oatmeal, soup, eggs, a couple of bananas that looked like they'd make it to Thursday. Every item I shelved, I counted against the number I didn't say out loud. $68,400 still owed from Abby's chemo. And that's after I sold the truck, closed the second card, and burned through my deployment savings. The interest kept growing. But my kid eats first. Millie came home around lunchtime Saturday. She dropped her bag at the door, spotted the dog, and went straight for him. Rook froze, watched me, then let her wrap her arms around his neck like they were old friends. Millie pulled back and looked at the woman sitting on the edge of the couch, still pale but upright. Hi, I'm Millie. Do you like pancakes? Vicky smiled at her like someone trying to remember how. I do, she said. Thank you. Millie shook her hand like she was closing a deal. Then she spotted the open balcony door behind her and froze just a beat. You okay by the rail? She asked. Not loud, just checking. Vicky's shoulders stiffened, and she nodded too quickly. Millie didn't press, just said, okay, and wandered into the kitchen to ask if we had blueberries. That night we all ate at the same table. Quiet, careful, like handling glass. Vicky kept thanking me for little things. A towel, the second blanket, the salt. Like it was hardwired into her to apologize for needing anything. Rook sat near her chair, tail still, ears up, eyes alert. Watching everything, especially me. The next morning, I took him out just after dawn. I didn't leash him, didn't need to. He stayed close, kept glancing at my knee like he knew it didn't bend right anymore. He didn't pull or wander, just stayed with me, matching my limp like a guy who'd done this kind of march before. Work was the usual grind. A magistrate ripped into me for not flagging a defendant who mouthed off at the front screening. I took the dressing down like I always do, face straight, voice low, same as in the Army. You don't win with volume. You win with discipline. Back in the locker room, I found another yellow slip from collections wedged into the edge of my locker door. Same font, same threat. I folded it into a perfect square and slid it into my wallet. That weight wasn't going anywhere, so no use flinching. That evening, Millie spread out her crayons and drew Rook with a red cape and a lightning bolt on his side. When she was done, she taped it to the fridge. Vicky watched from the kitchen doorway. She didn't say anything at first, just smiled in this tired way that made the whole apartment feel warmer without turning on the heat. You drew him like a hero, she said. Millie shrugged. He kind of is. Vicky bent down, kissed the top of Millie's head, then ran her fingers across the drawing like it was glass. Later, when I took the trash out, I came back and saw Vicky cleaning the counter like she needed to earn her stay by wiping away every speck. She didn't notice me standing there, but the way she worked, methodical, quiet, like she didn't want to leave fingerprints, it hit something in me. I walked into the kitchen, grabbed 2 glasses, and poured water in both. You're not a ghost here, I said, handing her one. She looked at me, not blinking. I'm not used to this. This? She swallowed. People who mean it when they say something. I didn't respond, just clinked my glass against hers and walked away. The dog followed me a second later, tail thumping once like he agreed with both of us. We started walking Rook together after dinner. Just around the block, nothing dramatic. But every night, without needing to plan it, she grabbed her hoodie, and I grabbed the leash we didn't use. Millie stayed behind most of the time, unless the homework load was light or the moon was out bright. Vicky always walked on the inside of the sidewalk, away from the edge where you could see the river slope down under the bridge. She didn't say anything about it, didn't flinch, didn't explain. But I saw how her eyes kept jumping. Pylons, waterline, railings, like her brain was cataloging exits again. One night Millie came with us. We passed a spot where the sidewalk bent near the chain-link fence just above the floodplain. Vicky slowed up, like she didn't want to be near it. Millie looked up at me and said, "She's scared of the water, Dad." Vicky froze mid-step. Not a dramatic thing, just full stop, shoulders tight, face blank. I told Millie, "Keep walking, sweetheart." And she did. Didn't ask again. She just slid her hand into mine like she used to back when every little sound at night had her crawling into our bed. Vicky caught up after a second. She didn't speak for the rest of the walk. Back home, Millie disappeared into her room and came out with something round in her hands. She rolled it across the hardwood toward me, an old baseball. The leather was white, soft from wear, and covered in hand-drawn blue stars. I remembered when she'd drawn them. It was the last spring Abby could sit up in the grass without help. My chest didn't ache. It cracked, like something had been bracing it for too long and finally gave. I sat down at the kitchen table, held the ball in my hand, and tried to say I was fine. But the words wouldn't come right. "I used to talk to her," I said, voice low. After she was gone, I mean, out loud. I'd say, "We're okay, don't worry," like maybe she could hear it, like maybe I could believe it. Vicky stood near the sink, arms crossed, eyes locked on the table. I didn't ask her to move. I didn't need her to. Chemo didn't just eat her body, it ate time, it ate our whole life. The last bill came the same week we buried her. $3,400 for meds that didn't save anything. I wasn't crying. Not at first. Then my throat closed and the tears came anyway. I looked away, tried to suck it in, but it didn't work. Millie walked over and put her hand on my sleeve. Just that. No speech, no hug, just steady. Vicky didn't say a word. She kept still, but she didn't leave the room either. She stood there like a fence post in a storm, quiet, still, and solid. I wiped my face with my sleeve. "I'm not a hero," I said. "I'm not even a mess anymore, just a man trying to keep a roof up and a kid safe." Vicky finally spoke. "You've done enough for me. You should be careful." "Yeah, well," I said, looking at her now. "I'm careful enough to know you didn't belong on a riverside, half dead, with no one to call. That's not just bad luck. That's somebody failing you." That stopped her. She shifted like she wanted to argue, then thought better of it. Rook got up from his spot near the coat rack and nudged her leg with his snout. That night I went to brush my teeth and heard something. Zipper, fabric shifting. I walked out into the living room and saw her by the front door. Her bag was packed and on her shoulder. The door was cracked 2 inches. Rook stood in front of it, not barking, not growling, just planted there like a wall with fur. She looked at him, then at me. "Sorry," she whispered, voice thin and hoarse. "I just thought maybe I shouldn't stay." "You can go if you want," I said, "but I'm not asking you to, and he's clearly against it." She looked down at the bag like she didn't recognize it. Then she let it slide off her shoulder and hit the floor. I made tea, 2 mugs, nothing fancy, just Lipton and honey. We sat at the kitchen table again, same spot. I set her mug in front of her and said, "One hard thing, each of us, whenever we're ready. No deadline." She nodded once. Not big, but solid. I wasn't trying to be noble or play the savior. I was tired. Tired of pretending like having someone in the apartment didn't matter. Like the sound of two people breathing in the same room was just background noise. She didn't look down, didn't shift away. She looked at me, straight on, and didn't blink. She didn't break eye contact when she started. She reached into her tote, slow and deliberate, like she was pulling something fragile from the bottom of a lake. "My real name is Paige Mallory," she said. She slid a passport across the table. The cover was worn soft at the corners, pages bent from too much handling. I didn't open it right away. I didn't need to. The way she said her name told me it was true. She was 27 now, she added. Like age mattered once you'd been hiding from your own life. She told me she used to design interiors at first. Small stuff inside her family's development firm. Kitchens that made sense. Living rooms that didn't fight the light. Then she moved into actual spaces, layouts and flow, working alongside architects and contractors. She talked with her hands when she explained it, like she still saw the rooms in her head. "My dad's Harlan," she said. "He's a builder, checks every line twice and won't tolerate shortcuts. My mom's Della. She keeps everyone fed, keeps the peace, keeps the whole thing human." She paused before the next part, took a breath that caught halfway in. "My sister was Tiana, younger, smart when she wanted to be. Always felt like she was second place, even when nobody else thought that. Tiana would have turned 24 this year. Paige said that flat, like she'd practiced saying it without cracking. She said her sister had a way of pushing lines, seeing who would blink first. At work, at home, with men, especially with men. Then came her husband. Vance Halbrook, she said. Real estate attorney. 34 now. He was, charming in public, calculated in private. She didn't dress it up. She didn't spit venom either. She just laid him out like a balance sheet. Vance liked her mind, she said, but he liked her last name just as much, maybe more. He knew what the Mallory firm was worth, knew where it was headed, knew timing mattered. The business transfer had started as a family plan, gradual, clean. Dad stepping back, Paige stepping up, paperwork spread out over years instead of rushed. That part she skimmed. What mattered was how fast Vance tried to turn it into something else. How often he talked about urgency. How often he brought documents home late and wanted signatures right then. I slowed it down, she said. I asked questions. That's when things got tense. Then she told me what happened at the river. One spring afternoon, she and Tiana were walking along the shallows, the slick rocks near the bend. Paige said the water wasn't high, but the footing was bad. They argued about something small at first, then not small at all. Words stacked up, voices rose, and Tiana shoved her near the edge. Paige shoved back. Not hard, not planned, just reflex. Tiana slipped herself, Paige said. That's the truth. I grabbed her arm, but the rock was wet, and the water took her faster than panic. She stopped there. Didn't dramatize it, didn't soften it either. Searchers found Tiana's watch and phone 2 miles downstream. Paige told me that part like she was reading from a report, because later she did read the report. My old Army buddy Rowan Pike, who'd gone from investigator to lawyer after he got tired of seeing cases rot, pulled the incident file for me weeks later. Timeline matched. Last known location matched. Items recovered downstream, same as she said. That night, all I had was her word, and it was enough. Grief blew the family apart. Paige said that part quietly. Her parents collapsed inward. Vance stepped forward. He handled calls, arrangements, memorial planning. He spoke for people who hadn't asked him to. I knew he'd spin it, she said, and I didn't trust the ground under my feet anymore. So she disappeared. For almost 3 years, she lived just outside town, working cash jobs, sleeping light, moving often. She called it living like a ghost. Rook was a half-grown stray back then. She fed him behind a laundromat, shared whatever she had. He stuck. He always stuck. Meanwhile, Vance started paperwork. Rowan showed me copies later. Petitions, filings, careful language. Vance cited hazardous conditions at the same river crossing. He used Page's prolonged absence to argue for a legal presumption of death. In absentia. Clean words for a dirty move. He was erasing me on paper, she said, so he could finish what he started. She cried once while telling me all this. Just once. It surprised her, and she apologized right away, swiping at her face like she'd broken a rule. Don't, I said. Don't apologize for being a person. She nodded and steadied herself. When she was done, the apartment felt smaller, like too much truth had been let in all at once. I finally opened the passport, glanced at the photo, then slid it back to her. You didn't make this up, I said. No, she said. I lived it. We sat there for a minute, quiet but not distant. Rook shifted at her feet, laid his head against her ankle like punctuation. I stood up and filled the kettle again, set it on the stove. When it whistled, I poured the water and set the mug in front of her. You're not alone anymore, I said, and went to turn off the light in the kitchen so she could breathe. She held the tea in both hands like she needed something solid to keep her grounded. Her voice didn't shake, but I could tell she was pulling every word from somewhere deep, like dragging rope out of a frozen well. Vance kept pushing my dad to finalize the transfer, she said. He started nice, just questions, little nudges. Then it was deadlines, meetings, signature pages, like he had somewhere else to be that required the company under his belt. I asked if Harlan had noticed. He noticed, but he didn't want to believe it. Vance had already been around for years. Dad said maybe I was misreading him. Said we'd all had a rough season. That season, Page said, was already poisoned. She remembered overhearing a quiet conversation between Vance and Tiana about a week before the river. She was walking past the hall near the back porch and caught just enough to knot her gut. Tiana laughing too hard, Vance saying something about timing and making it stick. Could have been nothing, Page said, eyes fixed on the mug. Except it didn't feel like nothing. And afterward, it sounded exactly like a setup. The night before the river, Page was supposed to sign the final set of transfer documents. Legal handoff, company control. She'd had them in her bag, read through them. All the right boxes were ticked, but something felt off. I told Vance I wasn't ready, that I needed my head clear. He didn't fight me, just kissed my cheek and said, "We'll circle back next week," like he'd already written the ending. Tiana, she said, was extra sweet that week. Overly cheerful, full of compliments, trying too hard. Page wanted to believe maybe they were patching things up. Maybe the river trip was a peace offering, a sister thing. One reset before the business changed hands for good. But that's not how it played out. On the riverbank, it turned in seconds. A sharp comment, then another. Something about who deserved what. Something about never being first. Page said she tried to walk away. Tiana grabbed my sleeve. I turned. She slipped. I reached for her. And then the water took her. That's how she described it. Like the river had been waiting. She called 911 right away, flagged down a pair of hikers, tore her palms bloody trying to get back down the embankment. When the medics showed up, she gave her statement. She waited while they set up along the current. When they pulled up her sister's watch and phone 2 miles downstream, Page said she knew it was already over. I didn't even go home, she said. I walked into town, sat in the back of a diner, and stared at the wall for 3 hours. The idea of Vance talking to my parents before I couldn't let that happen. I just disappeared. I leaned back in my chair. It wasn't disbelief. It was just trying to picture how someone could hold that all this time and still function. She glanced at me and added, "When I found out Vance was helping plan her memorial, that's when I panicked. I knew if he got his name on enough papers, he'd seal the whole thing shut. My parents would never know what really happened. I nodded slowly. You think he planned it? I don't know what I think, she said. I think he saw an opportunity. I think maybe he nudged Tiana just like he nudged me. Maybe not for the same reasons. The way she said it, like someone who'd been living with half a puzzle, was what stuck. Not accusations. Just too many coincidences lined up with the wrong man standing at the finish line. I ran because I figured I was next on his list, she said, or I'd get erased on paper. That line hit me like a steel-toe kick to the ribs, because she wasn't being dramatic. She meant it exactly the way it sounded. I called Rowan a few days later, brought him up to speed and asked him to start digging with whatever bandwidth he had between court cases. He wasn't a cop anymore, but he knew how to pull threads that still led somewhere. A week after that, he came by the courthouse and handed me a manila folder. Inside were scanned copies of Vance's filings. The language was polished, just clinical enough to stay legal. He cited hazardous disappearance at an active river site, referenced the recovery of identifying personal items, and highlighted pages, continued absence with no response to contact attempts. Then came the trust draft, an amendment granting Vance controlling interest if Page remained non-responsive through the fiscal quarter. I mean, legally it's clever, Rowan said. Ethically, it's garbage. That same week, Gus Rennick dropped off something unexpected. He was working on my truck, old favor, small job, when he mentioned something that made both of us go still. I was at a Riverside rental the day before the younger girl disappeared, he said. Burst pipe in the crawl space. I was under there half the day. When I was packing up, I saw Vance's Audi parked at the turnout near the trail. He was with someone, a woman with long dark hair. Could have been the sister. You sure it was his car? I remember because it was spotless and out of place. Had a dealership plate frame from across town. And I got a photo. Didn't think twice about it till now. He scrolled through his old photos, found it, and sent it to me. The timestamp on the image matched the date of his invoice, less than 24 hours before the river incident. Rowan took one look and said, "Not enough by itself, but it puts him there when he said he wasn't." That was enough for me. Enough to know Page wasn't spinning fantasies. Enough to stop treating this like a coincidence parade. Still, I wasn't about to play cowboy. I carry a badge at the courthouse, not a gun in the glove box. No dark alley meetings, no threats, just facts, laid out carefully until they can't be ignored. We were closing the gaps. I called Rowan from the courthouse parking lot, engine still running. He picked up on the second ring like he'd been expecting it. "Only if we do it legal," he said before I even finished the pitch. "I wouldn't ask you otherwise," I told him. That was the deal. No cowboy stunts. No baiting a confession in some back alley with a mic taped under the table. Just facts. Clean, recorded, and admissible. We set 2 goals. 1, get Page's identity officially restored. 2, get Vance Halbrook on record saying something useful in his own words. Rowan said anything usable had to come from a public space. No pressure, no lies. Consent rules mattered. Chain of evidence mattered more. I told him Iowa was a single-party consent state. As long as I was in the conversation, I could legally record it without telling the other guy. Rowan confirmed it. Clean chain, clean hands. If it ever got challenged, it would hold. He mapped out potential spots. Big lobby, lots of traffic, cameras in sight. We narrowed it down to a hotel restaurant on the east side. Vance had been there before for bar association mixers. Casual, upscale enough for his ego, busy enough to keep him from thinking it was a setup. Then I started building the file. I pulled Page's old emails, photos of her design work, copies of her resume with project timestamps, bank pings from the missing years, small deposits from temp gigs, a library fine, a vet bill. Rook had been vaccinated in a clinic 20 miles from Cedar Falls. The record listed her name, Real One. Address matched a month-to-month rental above a pawn shop. Page hadn't been dead. She'd just been surviving off the radar. Rowan went after the notary pages. pulled court copies from trust documents and filing logs. 2 signatures stuck out. Dates where Paige could prove she'd been 3 counties away. One was the same day she visited a walk-in clinic for a sinus infection. The other matched a debit purchase from a bus terminal in Omaha. "Could be sloppy," Rowan said. "Could be forged. Either way it helps." I told him I'd take it. To get Vance in the room, I didn't use my real name. I called from a courthouse line and left a message. "This is Dex Reed with Courthouse Security. We've got a small property issue involving your wife's name. Nothing urgent, but if you're available this week, I can buy you a coffee and get it squared away." Dex Reed was an internal alias we used for returning personal effects left behind during security checks. Common enough not to raise questions. Not my badge name. Not searchable outside our logs. He called back the next morning, professional and polite. Asked if we could meet Friday. I said noon. He picked the hotel. I said great. I hung up and added the date to my calendar with a red star. Paige wanted to come. I told her no. "You walk in at the end, not before. You need to stay out of the record until it counts." She didn't argue. Just nodded and folded laundry, like her hands needed something to do besides shake. That Thursday night, I stood in front of the ironing board with a dress shirt I hadn't worn in almost a year. Millie leaned against the doorframe in her pajamas, watching me like I'd grown a second head. "Why are you ironing? It's Thursday." "Sometimes grown-ups have to do things right the first time," I said. She raised one eyebrow like her mom used to do when I tried to sneak in sarcasm during serious moments. Then she went to bed. Paige stayed up late. She didn't ask questions. Just sat on the couch with Rook curled up beside her, one hand resting on his shoulder. Right before I turned in, she crouched down and took his head in both hands. "You watch Millie tomorrow," she said. "Don't let her out of your sight." He looked at her and let out one low huff, like a soldier confirming orders. I swear, if he'd nodded, I wouldn't have even blinked. Next morning, I shaved clean, checked the recorder battery twice, and slid it into the inside pocket of my coat. Rowan texted me a pin, marked camera locations, parking angle, lobby security desk. Then he added, "Stay calm. Don't chase. Just listen." Paige handed me a folded note. "In case you need something that sounds personal," she said. I didn't ask what was inside. I slid it into my wallet and left. I got there 30 minutes early. Parked across 2 lanes so I had a clean exit. Checked the pocket recorder. Then walked into the lobby like I was meeting a friend for lunch and not baiting a man into burying himself on tape. The restaurant sat just off the main hallway. Floor-to-ceiling windows, linen napkins, muted jazz floating overhead like perfume. I picked a table close enough to the host stand for lobby camera coverage, but far enough from the bus station hum of the espresso machine. Texted Rowan the table number. He replied with a thumbs-up emoji and a location pin for the overhead camera angle. One word after that, rolling. Vance showed 5 minutes early. Of course he did. He walked in like a man who had never once been asked to wait. Charcoal suit, no lint, gold tie clip, and shoes polished like they were just baptized. He smiled, stuck out his hand, and gave me the kind of handshake you use on fellow professionals. Firm, performative, and already turning away before it's done. "Dex, right?" he said. "That's me," I nodded, offering the fake badge ID we used for internal clearances. "Appreciate you meeting." "No trouble at all," he said, sitting like he owned the chair. "Always happy to help with loose ends." I let him talk first. That was the plan. Always let them open their own door. He started slow. Talked about grief, how hard it is for families like the Mallorys, with public eyes and private wounds, how legal documents can get tangled when emotions are high, how deadlines run the whole game in these kinds of transitions. He used the word transitions like he was talking about retirement, not death. I nodded in all the right places, waited for the first opening. "So," I said, pulling out a manila envelope like it was just paperwork, "I noticed some inconsistencies on the notary pages, and I came across a petition for presumption of death filed last year. Curious wording." He didn't blink, just tilted his head like a professor waiting for a student to stumble. "Do you know what hazardous disappearance means?" he asked. "Sure," I said. "But I also know Paige Mallory isn't dead, because I've seen her alive." That landed. His pupils tightened. His jaw didn't move, but the muscle in his cheek jumped. Then, just like that, he smoothed it out, slick as marble, smiled a lawyer's smile and leaned back in his chair. "Well," he said, "then she should show up and fix the mess she caused. Would save everyone a very expensive audit." "Would it?" I asked, calm. "Look, Dex," he said, as if we were equals, as if I cared about his tone. "You know how these things go. The river's not exactly forgiving. People slip. It's not always nefarious. Sometimes fate's just impolite." That's when I knew we had him. I let him keep talking. Let him circle around the idea like it was a bonfire he'd already lit. He didn't say I planned it, but he danced around outcomes, timing, narratives, and how certain filings had to be made before things got complicated. Rowan had told me to keep him comfortable, and I did. I nodded. I said sure, and I get it, and even nobody wants this to drag out. Let him think this was about negotiating her return, about saving face. He leaned forward at one point, voice dropping just enough to feel rehearsed. "We can make this clean," he said. "If she's smart, she'll stay quiet. If not, well, the cameras at the river didn't see anything." Just under an hour, I stood and closed the folder like we were done. Vance reached for the check, naturally. "She'll be in touch," I said. I walked him past the host stand, slow and steady, made sure the lobby camera got a clean angle of us together, recorder still going. Near the exit, I spotted her. Paige stood by the atrium window, back straight, coat loose around her frame, face calm like a statue with a pulse. She wasn't trembling. She wasn't hiding. She looked like someone who'd buried enough fear to make room for fury. Vance saw her and pulled up short. His face drained in real time. His lips parted like he might say something sane, but what came out was pure panic. "Don't you dare," he hissed, low and sharp, full of teeth. Paige didn't blink. She didn't move, just stared at him like he was a dead bolt that had finally given. "We're done," she said. 2 words. No drama, no echo. I stepped between them, didn't touch either one. Just gave Vance a look that told him the conversation was over. And this time, he didn't get to lead. He turned and left like a man who had somewhere to be, but his walk had lost its polish. Paige and I stepped out into the sunlight together. She didn't speak until we were halfway to the car. "You got it?" she asked. "Every word," I said. He moved faster than I expected. By Monday morning, a sealed envelope was waiting on my desk. No return address, just my name typed in clean font like it had been printed by someone with a lawyer on speed dial. The letter inside came from Vance Halbrook's firm. It accused me of improper interference in a pending civil matter, and hinted that I had knowingly harbored an individual attempting to circumvent lawful proceedings. In other words, he was calling me a dirty courthouse cop and Paige a fraud. The chief called me in before lunch, closed the door, took off his glasses, and dropped the letter on the desk between us, like it was already steaming. "I got a call from county council," he said. "They're asking questions." "I figured they might," I said. "Is it true you contacted Halbrook using a false name?" "I used a courthouse alias to return what I framed as a property item. No threats, no misrepresentations. We use it all the time for abandoned wallets and IDs. It was recorded, lawful, and no rules were broken." He didn't respond right away. Just opened the folder I brought and read the memo Rowan had drafted, detailing everything from Vance's questionable notary dates to the recorded meeting and Rowan's intent to submit a formal ethics complaint. I sat quiet, calm, steady. "Do you want to step away from Mallory-related security screenings until this settles?" the chief asked. "I'll do that," I said. "Out of respect for the process." He nodded. "Smart." Rowan filed a preservation notice with the hotel before I was even out of the building. Lobby camera footage, time-stamped seating logs, restaurant reservation metadata, the works. He knew better than to trust anyone to accidentally lose the tape. That same day, Paige got served. A court officer brought the documents right to our door, an emergency motion filed by Vance to accelerate the presumption of death ruling. He claimed her reappearance might be a deliberate impersonation or coordinated fraud, citing a handful of obscure case precedents where people faked their own returns for inheritance games. Paige read the whole thing in silence. When she was done, she folded it once and set it on the kitchen table like she didn't want it touching the floor. She said, "He's not scared of me. He's scared of proof." I nodded. Then let's give him more of it. Millie got home from school around 4. She handed me a drawing she'd done in class. Crayon on construction paper. Rook barking on a bridge. Paige standing beside her with one hand on my shoulder and one on Millie's head. 3 stick figures and a dog. "We're not lost anymore," she said, like it was just a normal observation. I didn't answer, just took the drawing into the next room and let myself breathe. That night, Gus Rennick called. Said something had been bugging him, so he went back through his photo roll on the phone. "I found it," he said. "The day before Tiana disappeared. I was patching that rental pipe, and I remember snapping a picture of the turnout before I left. It had rained, and I didn't want to get stuck in the mud. Vance's Audi was in it. You can't see his face, but there's a woman in a red windbreaker. Could be Tiana." "Send it," I said. He did. The timestamp on the photo matched the time on his invoice to the minute. Rowan looked at it later and said, "It's not ironclad, but it gets us closer. Puts him near the water before he said he was." The next day, Rowan got a call from Harlan Mallory. He didn't leave a voicemail, just a number and the word urgent. We called him back from my place on speakerphone. "I've been looking at the timeline," Harlan said, "and I've been reading your memo. It makes sense now. The notary sloppiness, the push to finalize. I hired a quiet auditor last year. Had a feeling something wasn't clean. Vance gave me the same documents twice with different dates." Paige was sitting at the table, jaw locked, arms folded tight. "Your mother hasn't slept since the river," Harlan added. "She needs to see you. We both do. But I won't push. Not until you're ready." Paige didn't answer him. Just said, "I hear you," and ended the call. Later that night, we stood by the balcony while Rook sniffed the cold air like he was reading weather reports. "You think I'm going to blow it if I go back?" she said. "No," I told her. "I think you're scared you might. But we'll do it right. One thing at a time. Paperwork first. Tears after, if needed." Rook started sleeping outside Millie's bedroom door again. Every time tires rolled past the building, he lifted his head and let out a short huff, like a guard letting the world know someone was still on watch. My knee started flaring up again, especially when the air got damp. I didn't complain. I never do. But one morning I found a sticky note taped to my brace. Millie's handwriting, shaky, but determined, strong. It was corny, and it worked. We drove to the Mallory house on a gray Sunday that couldn't make up its mind between rain or sun. Paige held Rook's collar the whole ride like she was steadying herself more than him. I didn't bring anything but my phone and a promise to keep things civil if anyone lost their footing. The house sat behind a long gravel drive, same one Rowan had shown me on Google Maps when we were prepping. Big porch, older brick, roof redone recently, builder touches you'd expect from a man like Harlan. Paige sat frozen as we pulled in, hand clenched tight in Rook's fur. Della opened the door before we even knocked. 54, hair pulled back, face soft in a way that only happens after years of holding too much in. She looked like she'd been standing there since the moment Paige vanished. Paige stepped up first. Rook stopped beside her. I stayed back. "Mom," she said. Then, "Dad." That was all. Her voice cracked halfway through. Della reached out but didn't rush. "You're here," she said, and it landed like it was the only sentence she'd rehearsed since the river. Harlan stood just behind her, arms folded, jaw tight, not angry, just holding the frame up. He nodded at me once, then looked at Paige and said, "We're going to fix the name first." Only a man who builds things would say something like that. Fix the name, like restoring a structure with cracks, not erasing what happened, just setting it right. Inside, we sat around the long dining table. The wood looked older than all of us combined. Rowan was already there with his bag open, transcript copies stacked in a folder, hotel video timestamps queued up on his laptop. He didn't waste time. Slid the folder to Harlan, flipped the laptop screen so they could see the moment Vance said she should stay quiet, the way his voice dipped, the timing, the calculation in every pause. Then came Gus's photo, invoice date stamped, car plate half visible, red windbreaker near the front bumper. Harlan didn't look surprised, just tired. "I hired a quiet auditor last fall," he said, after Vance pushed me to sign off on a second version of the trust memo with a new date. Something smelled off. This confirms it. We got to work. Rowan laid out the forms to vacate the presumption of death petition. Paige signed the affidavit to restore her identity. Legal name, birth date, full signature. Della sat beside her and refilled the tea without saying a word, but her hands trembled every time the kettle touched the cups. Rowan said, "We'll file the bar complaint this week. The supporting materials are strong." "I'll handle the follow-ups," Harlan added, already thumbing through his contact list. He had too many shortcuts in place for this to be random. Millie wandered into the dining room halfway through. She'd been playing with Rook out back. Her cheeks were red from the cold, hair wind-tangled. She looked around like she was measuring the energy in the room, then slid up next to Paige and tapped her arm. "Can I call you Paige now, instead of Miss Vicky?" Paige smiled for the first time since we arrived, full and honest, no tight edges. Her eyes shimmered but didn't fall apart. "Please do," she said. By the time we stood to leave, the tension had shifted. There was still weight in the air, but it was bearable now. Like the first warm day after winter when the ground starts to give back a little. Harlan walked us to the porch. Before I could say anything, he held out his hand. "I'd like to cover your legal costs," he said. "It's the least we can do." I shook my head. "I appreciate the offer, but I'll only take what the court awards. Nothing under the table, clean or not at all." He didn't push, just nodded like he respected the line I drew. Driving back, Paige stared out the window the whole time. Rook had wedged himself between the seats, his head resting against my shoulder from the back. It wasn't comfortable, and it wasn't light, but it felt right. Paige finally looked over and said, "That could have gone worse." I glanced at her and said, "Yeah, and it'll still get harder." "I know," she said, "but at least now it's real." We didn't say anything else the rest of the way home. We didn't have to. Things didn't explode after that. They unfolded, the way the law does. Slow, deliberate, and eventually permanent. The bar complaint stuck. Rowan handled the language with the same precision he used in the Army. Nothing extra, just truth with receipts. Vance's partners put out a bland announcement that he was taking a leave of absence. A few weeks later, the state opened a formal ethics investigation tied to the forged notary pages and the petition to declare Paige legally dead. No one said fraud out loud, but it charged every sentence. Rowan handed me the stamped court order in a manila envelope one Tuesday afternoon. No ceremony, no speech. Just passed it over like handing off an extra pen. "She gets to exist again," he said. I brought it home. Paige took the envelope with both hands and opened it on the kitchen counter like it might vanish if she blinked too fast. The seal caught the light. The ink was real. Her name was back. She held it like a birth certificate and a diploma rolled into one. She didn't cry, but she looked at me like maybe this was what breathing really felt like. Millie and Rook settled into a new rhythm. After-school park visits, snack time, drawing, homework, bedtime. Paige joined when she wasn't helping Della catch up on bills or straighten out old records. She started grocery shopping again. She handled a return at Target without freezing. She didn't flinch at the sound of water anymore. At work, the chief called me back into his office. No letter this time. No furrowed brow. The complaint's officially closed out, he said. Marked unfounded. No disciplinary record. Appreciate it, I told him. He paused, then said, "You did good. Quiet, but good." That was the best compliment I'd get from him, and I knew it. The debt didn't vanish. Abby's treatment bills still came in monthly reminders. But something loosened. Harlan paid his own legal costs. I paid mine. My balance kept shrinking by inches the way most things do when you stop bleeding. One Saturday, Paige painted Millie's bedroom. Cool green on the walls, a stripe of sunlight yellow around the window. Millie said it looked like the inside of a treehouse. I swapped out the squeaky hinge on the door and felt useful in the kind of way that doesn't earn medals, but means something anyway. Later that week, we walked the trail behind the courthouse. Me, Paige, Rook, and Millie just ahead, skipping rocks into the brush. Paige kept pace beside me, coat open, face soft in the late light. I could have said nothing, and it would have been enough. But I didn't stay quiet. "I've been careful with us," I told her, "because of Millie, because of everything, and because I've been more scar than skin for a long time." She didn't hesitate. "I've been in love with you since the dog and the cold and the stupid courage it took to carry a stranger," she said. "But I didn't say it because I wasn't done breaking apart. Now I'm ready to build, not hide." I stopped walking, reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the ring. Nothing fancy. No box. Just a simple gold band that had been sitting in my drawer for weeks, waiting for the right kind of quiet. "I don't need an answer today," I said. "I just need the truth when it's time." She looked at it, then at me. "I already said yes," she said, like it was a fact we'd both just remembered. Rook barked once, sharp and proud. Millie turned around from the trail and yelled, "Did I miss something?" "Not a thing," I called back. We kept walking, and the noise in my head, the one that used to fill the silence every night, finally gave way to something better. Quick thing before you scroll. Have you ever had to rebuild your life from zero while still carrying someone else's damage? Just curious how many of us have walked that line. If you've got hype, tapping it helps this story reach more people who might need it. And if the story hit you somewhere real, hit like, subscribe. It's one click, but it matters a lot. Drop a comment too. Even just good story or your thoughts, I read everyone.